So what you're trying to do, what you've basically done, is you've made the outside dimensions on your tracing paper out of your 11 by 14 sheet. You basically brought in an inch on the side. So your outside dimensions are 10 inches by 13 inches. And then you measured 1 inch, 2 inch, 1 inch, 2 inch, 1 inch, 2 inch. I don't want to make this end up being too confusing, but basically what you've got is you've got a 1 inch border around your 12, what are going to be your 12 individual units, which will be your line studies, your line compositions. Okay, so there's 1 inch in between all of them, and then you're going to end up with 12 basic line compositions studies. You're going to want to use your pencil when you start drawing these out to try to start like creating the compositions and thinking about interaction of line, the spacing of line, the weight of line, the variety of line. Some of your lines can be very organic and fluid, where they're not ruled, where they're not linear. They can overact, they can interact, they can overlap. You can use different weights of line to kind of experiment. But ultimately what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing all of these in pencil on your tracing paper, and then I'm going to show you how to transfer them on to your Bristol board. And then once you transfer them onto your Bristol board, that's where you're going to be able to start inking them with the black pens. So just remember, this is very experimental. There's no right or wrong. I just want you to try to create a lot of variety. And you can use your ruler to get really hard-edged lines, that are obviously very geometric or linear. You can start playing around with different types of geometric shapes, triangles, circles, whatever you want to do. But you just want to make sure that a lot of them are like all individualistically interesting. And so when you bring them all together as a whole, there's a really strong contrast and a variety between all of them. Okay, so once you've kind of got the basic layouts for all 12 of your units, the overall kind of structure in each one, the composition, which is basically just the arrangement of all the different kind of formal kind of things you're trying to investigate or experiment with. Again, like I said, in terms of contrast and spacing and direction and stuff like that. If you want, in some instances, where things are going to be darker, if you just want to get a sense of how it's going to look visually, you can fill it in with your pencil to just kind of bring out some darker areas. And then also just notice that, sometimes students like to make these like extremely detailed, or sometimes students like to make them a little bit more minimal, like what's happening here and here. And that's not a bad thing to do, but it's nice to have a contrast between ones that have some more density or some more overlapping or some more overlaying in contrast to ones that are a little bit simpler. So as you can see in this student example, she did something that's extremely, you can see how very hard-edged and linear these are. But just remember, when you transfer these, that's when you're going to be able to go back in and darken and really bring out the contrast and kind of play with the depth of what's occurring in each one. But like I said, I want to be very clear. There's no right or wrong to what you do. This is a completely individualistic, your way of being creative, to just kind of experiment and just play around with this idea of line and how line basically really forms the structure and basis for the overall composition within the parameters of a picture plane. And this basically just would be the picture plane and the edges of the composition. So after you're done with this on your tracing paper, if I lift it up like this, I'm going to just lift it up. I'm going to turn my tracing paper over like this. I'm going to use one of my darker leads, like I said, a 5B or a 6B, and I'm basically just going to go over with my pencil over each unit like this. So I turned it over and I'm doing this on the back of basically each unit like this. And all I'm doing is I'm adhering a layer of graphite to what I did with my drawings when I was laying them out on the other side. So what this is going to enable me to do is to keep the structure that I came up with in my drawings and transfer them exactly how I drew them out initially, and transfer them exactly on the Bristol board, which will be on obviously the final surface, and that's when I'm going to be able to start inking. Okay, so then I'm going to do that obviously on the back of all 12 of them. And remember, you want to use a really dark lead, because the more graphite you have, the easier it'll transfer on the Bristol board, and it'll be clearer to see. If you use a lead that's not dark enough, it'll be too light and you won't be able to see it as well. So after you do that on the back of all 12, then lay down your Bristol board sheet. Basically, remember your perimeters are 13 by 10, and then just line it up with the perimeters of your Bristol board on the edge, like so. Okay, and then just make sure you tape it so it doesn't move at all. And then basically, I didn't do the graphite on the back of all of them, but I just want to show you what's going to happen here. You're just going to draw back over your lines that you did in each unit, like this. Okay, so then I'm going to go back over. So I'm just going back over, and it doesn't have to be exact, but what this enables you to do is, rather than try to like copy what you drew, this gives you basically almost the exact structure of what you initially drew. Okay, so then you're going to go back and you're just going to draw back over all your lines. If you want to draw little lines for where the edges of the unit are, like in the corners right here, that's fine. Because remember, after you ink all of these on your Bristol board, you'll be able to erase all these pencil lines. They'll all go away when you clean up the piece. So when I lift it up, what you can see now is that the pencil lines have basically transferred onto the Bristol board. And then that's when I'm going to start inking them. So now that we've transferred all the individual units onto the Bristol board, now we're going to start inking them. So if I want to enclose each unit, I just use my ruler where I transferred it to just do outside edge line like this with my black pen. And you've got 4 different widths of pen, so it'd be up to you what you want the outside border to be. If there are lines within your design when you ink it that you want to be really straight, then again, I'm just going to use a different tip pen. That's a number 2. This is a number 3. I'm using my rule to draw the lines that I want really straight, like this. And then basically, any of the more organic kind of fluid lines or rounder lines, or I'm just going to use how I would normally draw, like this. Okay, and now, so this is going to be the decisions where you can start saying to yourself, like, well, I'm going to want, another line in here, but now I'm going to fill this in so it's black right here, like this. Okay, and now I think I'm going to add some directional lines coming out between the spacing right in there. Now I think I'm going to draw another line. So what you're doing is that you've drawn out, remember you transferred your original structure, but now what you're doing is you're making decisions to bring out more contrast and add more weight to specific lines in terms of width, and obviously in terms of spacing. And so basically, this is going to be the part, the execution of it, where it should get where you're inking everything and you're kind of creating each composition uniquely on its own. And then essentially when you're done inking all of them, you basically, that will basically be it. So that's why I said if you lay out you started with the simple compositional structures in terms of the directional accesses of certain aspects of the compositions, spacing, weight, contrast, fluidity of line, and now you're just going back through and you're just making kind of aesthetic decisions, like your own creative decisions in terms of what you want to do in terms of adding weight to certain areas of line, leaving areas that are lighter. Like I don't want, like say you don't want to add anything in there, then you just leave it the way that you originally had drawn it when you first made the design. And now you're just making decisions about where you want certain things to either be amplified in terms of the weight with the contrast, where the line gets thicker or darker, or the line gets, or the line's a little bit, not weaker, but it doesn't have as much strength as some lines or surrounding areas around it. Then when you're done inking everything, basically you get your eraser after everything's dried, and I would wait like, half hour or hour or whatever, just to make sure. And you just basically erase and you clean up and you get rid of all your pencil lines, and then you'll end up essentially with all your... So once you've inked everything, you cleaned everything up with your eraser, got rid of all your pencil lines, you will have 12 very clean individual units that will come together collectively as a whole. So you want them, again, you're trying to make them work on an independent level, and you're trying to make them work as a grouping too. Okay, so before I used to have students mount everything on black illustration board, but black illustration board is too hard to get right now, and especially online, it's also expensive. So I'm gonna have to stay away from presentation issues concerning mounting, so you're not gonna have to worry about that with any of your other projects this semester. So it's basically just gonna be, this will be the final piece on Bristol board. Okay. And then when you're done, all you need to do is just very lightly just write your name in the bottom right-hand corner and your first initial of your last name. Okay, and then you're going to want to take a photo of it, send me the JPEG, go into your camera setting, try to tighten up the parameters, crop it, use your exposure settings for contrast, just as long as it looks, really, sharp. Send me the JPEG, label it with your name, and then assignment 1, and that's going to be the same case with all the assignments during the semester. Just have your name labeled on the JPEG with the assignment number. Just send it to me via email, and then I'll keep it in your online folder. And that's basically it.